welcome to United Hour, your one-stop shop for all things Manchester United. I'm your host, Nick.
I'm Ashwin.
We are going from Manchester to New York for this episode. I was just looking back, Ashwin, I think it's your second appearance this season, and you were on with Jamie, and that was back in August. We hadn't started the season that well. We'd drawn with Fulham, but this was before we'd lost to Grimsby and all that stuff. So you were kind of like, it was still early times. So yeah, we will get into where you're at on Amorim and the team and everything. But yeah, we are recording after the Nottingham Forest game. It was a 2-2 draw. Sadly, we did not get that fourth win in a row, but at least we avoided defeat. We've not been that good away from home, as I mentioned on the last podcast. So yeah, at least we didn't lose there. What's your immediate takeaways from that game?
I thought it was sloppy from some of the. Look, Cunha was amazing against Liverpool. He was really good against Forest. I thought he was, not against Forest, against Brighton. But I thought he was really sloppy against Forest. Dalot, we already know. I actually have some sympathy for him because he is playing out of position, and I think that, as is at right back, he's at best ideally would be a squad level player. At left back, he's kind of, I think, he's starting so that Dorgu has time to develop. And, look, we saw what happened with Dorgu when he came out against Brighton. He was not good in that match. But you can afford that a little bit more when you come on as a sub, I think. And it affords him as a young developing player, he's not in the firing line as much. So I think Dalot is having to sacrifice a little bit there. Not good enough. I thought Shaw was great. Thought De Ligt was really solid as well. Casemiro had another fantastic game. But the front three just didn't get firing. And I thought Ahmad was sloppy too. So a lot of players that were really strong, right, against Brighton in what I think was probably our best performance of the season. They weren't as strong in this match away from home. Getting beat to the ball, losing out, in duels. But my main takeaway from this game is, I think before the season I had said that I thought United would finish something like 6th or 7th. And right now they're still pretty much on track to do that. But I thought the best part of this game is, yes, you show that fragility to not just concede once, right, but concede twice immediately after the second half starts. But they did show some actual backbone. They did fight back into the game. And I thought that was a really positive reaction after what we kind of saw at Brentford, where even though we did have a chance to equalize, obviously, with the Bruno penalty kick, that did not feel nearly as combative of a response. And as soon as that, they had multiple instances in that game of when things go against you, you let it drop for, 10, 15, 20 minutes of the match, maybe longer. And while they definitely did not start the second half the way they should have, I thought the first half was fairly positive, if uninspiring at various points in attack. But their fight back was good. And they get an equalizer through, obviously, Ahmad's amazing goal. And they were right on the doorstep of nicking the 3 points, right? And I thought their reaction, if you watch them after United scored the second goal, if you look at all the players, there was no massive celebration. There was no, it was a lot of, let's get the ball, let's get back to the halfway line. I think their comments, most of the players' comments after the game, did not take this as some huge, what a great point we won, but more as 2 points dropped. And I think that those small things where you can see the mentality shift a little bit, those are promising signs. But obviously, yeah, you want to win the 3 points. But I also will say, I think Forest now with Dyche in charge, they will not be whatever they have been to start this season.
Yeah, I mean, we were expecting a difficult game against a Sean Dyche team. And we know Forest last season were amazing defensively. It had absolutely fallen apart this season, so it wasn't that much of a surprise. So yeah, pleasing to get 2 goals there. We did have an unchanged lineup for the first time in a long time. no surprises, like you say, after a good win against Brighton, and now we're only playing once a week, so there's not really that need for rotation for tiredness. And for the first time in ages, we didn't have any injuries from one week to the next either, and a couple of players back on the bench, Maguire, Mount, and whatever. So yeah, a natural unchanged lineup. I think everybody picks himself there, and it's the way we had to be. I generally am kind of okay with this result. I had said on the last podcast that I just wanted to avoid defeat in these next two away games. Imran said he wanted at least 4 points to keep us kind of on track for that 3 in a row we'd gone on from. But as I said, we've been a bad away from home, and I just want to stop losing games. Once we can get to the point where we're difficult to beat, I think we're good attacking wise, especially at home. And yeah, we just need to stop throwing away points completely. So yeah, I'm kind of with that. I was just happy that we got back into this game. But yeah, we started well. We're 1-0 up at half time. It wasn't a great half, wasn't a lot of chances, but I thought we deserved it to be 1-0 up. And Casemiro, after we talked him up last week and talked about his kind of redemption arc, pops up with a headed goal. And he's had plenty for us. We miss him massively. I never actually expected when he came to us that he was going to get as many goals for us as he has. Did you ever see him as a goal scorer before he turned up at ours?
I wouldn't say he's a goal scorer, but I always felt like he had a knack for, coming up with some big goals. He had a goal in a Champions League final, right, against Juventus, if I remember correctly. But it's like, I don't know, he's one of those players, right, where you just feel like if something drops to him in a moment, in a big game or whatever, that you can kind of trust him to handle it. I don't know. He just has a knack for kind of being in these big, like, right place at the right time.
Definitely. And great for us to get a set piece goal. It's something we haven't had that many off over time. In fact, and yeah, normally we're weak on set pieces at the other end is always the major issue. In fact, both of our goals kind of come from set pieces. I mean, Ahmad not directly, but it starts over there. And then, as I say, an absolutely worldy of a finish gets back in this. But it was that bit in the middle that is the big worry. We even said it last week against Brighton when we were 3-0 up, cruising, and suddenly we end up conceding 2 goals, and then you're like nervous end over there. Again, we see that defensively there is still major weaknesses in this team. We always seem to have some kind of overload with a free man on our back post, and I think, yeah, Sean Dyche obviously knows this, and they went for it second half, straight out there. Within 5 minutes of that second half, we were like from 1-0 up to 2-1 down. And I don't know who you blame here. Do you think it's the system? Is it players letting us down? Where it's just happening time and time again, this kind of thing. Defensively, I know we kept a clean sheet against maybe Sunderland, but we hardly ever get them. And just almost lucky only to be conceding 2 goals this day.
It's a weird one for me because I thought there were periods of the game where we were comfortable even defensively, but it felt like once Forest got a little bit of a grip into the game, they were able to not just, they created chances, but they created chances because they were sustaining pressure and we weren't able to release it in any way. One thing, I think I mentioned this in our group chat after, is both the goals come from crosses that start on the right-hand side. And that, I think, has been a big source of the chances that are created against us, like that specific area. I mean, crosses in general have been an issue, but I think that right-hand side, our left-hand side, I should say, has been a really big problem. And, look, I think for the first goal, if you want, you can blame Ahmad, sure. I think if you're playing him at right wing back, you kind of have to live with he's going to lose balls like that in the air sometimes, and that's part of the trade-off you get, because also, he'll score a worldie to get our second. But I think that left-hand side, that rotation between Cunha, Delo, and Shaw, so whoever there's a left center back, the left wing back, and that left 10, that's constantly an area where opponents get joy. And if you remember back to the Liverpool match, that's actually where, Liverpool are able to create that chance for, God, why am I blanking on his name? Gakpo, that he put wide that would have equalized it at 2-2. But that area where you see that miscommunication constantly, where Shaw will go out with the runner, and then Dalot will recover back to the positions, then Shaw kind of gets back to the middle, and it's like, and then the left 10 maybe isn't marking the fullback on that side, so they can just play it back to the fullback, who has the freedom of day to put it across. But we're constantly getting, outnumbered either 3v2, 2v1 down that side, and I think it's our biggest issue. And I honestly, I think it's probably why Amorim has Mount equally in his plans at times to Cunha for that reason, because I think there is a solidity that comes with Mason Mount playing on that side, not just in terms of how he presses higher up the pitch, but I think just in terms of his diligence and intelligence in terms of just how he kind of handles those defensive responsibilities. So that to me is the biggest concern. And then also I would say for the second one, like I think that was really frustrating to me, because one of the things United have been good at, and this has been shown statistically this season and really since Amorim came in, is winning second balls. Winning second balls has been a really, really strong suit under Ruben Amorim. So, I know a lot of people were upset that both Yoro and De Ligt go for the header. I think that can happen. What's more frustrating for me is Dalot's right there. If he's alert, he can get to that second ball, clear it, no problem. But he's dead on his feet. And you see him all the time in these situations where he's just not alert. He's not reading the danger, anticipating the danger. And, they get, basically a sitter for the second as a result. So that to me, you talk about clean sheets. I think that is a really big problem for us.
Yeah, definitely there is an issue. But I actually think there's issues with crosses from both sides. We've seen goals going in at both sides. And yeah, there's definitely an issue with Dalot as well. I'd say off our regular kind of starters, he is the most maligned player at the moment. And even when you're at Old Trafford, where generally fans are supporting the manager and all the players, Dalot gets a lot of stick. And he's even a player who's supposedly part of our leadership team at the moment. I think part of that is being Portuguese. I'm absolutely sure if he wasn't Portuguese and speaking the first language of the manager, he would not be part of our six-man current leadership team. Did you also see this crazy story about Dalot, where apparently on some kind of distant heritage, Dalot and Amorim are related? And Dalot also, and this may explain a lot, has some famous circus performer, Portuguese circus acrobat or something, in his old DNA ancestry lineage. So yeah, maybe this explains a lot, partly about Dalot and connections to the circus, but also Amorim and Dalot having some old heritage back there. But yeah, I do also agree with you that I think he's probably much better on the right side than the left. So he is playing out of position in a way. I think he's preferred to Dorgu because he has that more experience defensively. He should know better. Whether he does or not is up for question. And Dorgu probably plays games where we're thinking we need to attack a bit more. We're going to have a lot more of the ball. So yeah, home games, we probably more suit Dorgu over there.
It's good to make Dorgu earn it too. Like, I don't think that's like, even if Dalot's playing poorly, which I agree, he's not playing great. He's obviously got, and there's limitations, which Amorim talked about after the match, right? About how, when you play Dalot into certain positions, he always wants to chop it back onto his right foot. Whereas if you play Dorgu into those positions, he can just kind of whip it in first time on his left. But I think, look, we saw, I'm a fan of Dorgu. I think that there's potential there, but he has not had a great start to the season. He's made mistakes. And I think it's okay to make him earn that position and not just have it be given to him because, we're limited in our options there. I think that's actually a decent bit of management, especially for a young player who, I'm sure you've seen his performance start as soon as he makes a mistake. It's like, he's shit. Why do we let Carreras go? And why did we let Carreras go? That's its own separate issue. But you get when you put these players in that position so early, this is still Manchester United. The standard is still what it is. The expectations are high. I think it's okay to protect him a little bit by bringing him in off the bench, but also making him have to earn that starting berth rather than it being given to him because he is obviously the most suited to playing that position right now with the options we have in the side. So I actually think that's okay, even if I totally understand why everybody gets frustrated and, beyond annoyed with Diego Dallo.
No, and yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear that Ineos have often gone for kind of young and promising players when they've signed people. So they've gone for a Dorgu. They've gone for Lemons rather than Martinez. They're not going for the tried and tested, which often we did do in the past, pay a lot of money for. And that's why, yeah, we got a player like Dorgu, and then you have to expect it's going to take him time to adapt. And he did only come in the kind of January window, so he's still not even been a year in Premier League. I think he's doing okay in general. I'm still do think in general, though, that our wing-back areas are still a major issue for us. I think our play in a lot of areas is improving, but I still think that is one of our big weaknesses. I mean, we all know midfield is something we need to look at. But yeah, wing-back, I'm still very unsure. I mean, you mentioned Ahmad as well. You see the good and the bad from him. He's not a defensive player. For me, he's playing out of position every single week, and he is linking very well, attacking-wise, with Mbumo, but you see for that first goal where he's out jumped by Morgan Gibbs-White, you don't really want to play like Ahmad in that position. Although, funnily enough, I saw some comments online saying, oh, it's a total mismatch in size. How can we have Ahmad against Morgan Gibbs-White? People may be surprised to hear that Ahmad is taller than Morgan Gibbs-White. They're both short asses, by the way, like 5'8". I mean, yeah, I'm 6'1", so I can say that, yeah. But yeah, Ahmad is as tall, in fact, taller than Morgan Gibbs-White, so certainly not a mismatch in size or anything like that. He does just mistime his jump. But yeah, he's not a defensive guy. He's not the guy you want to be winning headers in the box, and this is a problem in that formation when you have somebody like that. And as I say, time and time again, we seem to have the opposition have three players at the back post again and again and again. Every single match, you'll see crosses come in, and they have unmarked players. And for me, it still goes down to problems with this three in the back system where who's marking who's going for that header. And it is still the biggest problem in this team. Defensively, conceding goals every single week. And yeah, I will give credit to Amorim. We are playing better attacking wise. We are scoring goals. On the XG side, it kind of suggests maybe that we were lucky in this game in a way. But I also think that we were overdue going back towards parity with our XG. I mean, it's showing 1.55 for Nottingham Forest, 0.9 for us. Obviously, that Ahmad goal is an absolute worldie and a very low XG. We did have other chances. We had a lot of half chances, but I think we've kind of been due some of these goals. In the last two games, we have outperformed the XG, but we were way underperforming it until this recent run. And normally that's what you expect. It's one of the things we said earlier in the season, why maybe they are willing to give the manager time. Because some of the stats, especially on expected goals, expected points, were showing we should have been doing better. And now we are doing better. I mean, at one point in this game, at half-time, we were second in the league. Second. If we'd won this match, we'd still be joint second with Manchester City. As it goes, the draw means we end up in 8th. But it's all very congested in the Premier League at the moment. I think there's only 4 points separating City in second place and Villa in 11th, and we're in that kind of bunch in the middle. So yeah, you put in any kind of run of 2-3 games and you can zoom up that table, no problems. I mean, Arsenal are 6 points ahead at the moment. I don't mind that. I will prefer Arsenal over Liverpool, over City any day of the week. Although, yeah, I do have a few Arsenal fans who will be absolutely insufferable if they do win this league, but I guess they will definitely be the best of a lot of options. But yeah, we're in that mix. And I guess at this point in the season, it's all we can expect, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we've had one of the toughest run of fixtures in the league, maybe the toughest.
Yeah, the first 5 was officially the toughest. Now it's been slightly easier, although we had Liverpool thrown in there as well. So yeah,
and it's it's not just that, but it's also you played some of your bogey teams, right? Brighton has been a huge problem for United, especially at Old Trafford, and you picked up 3 points there. Forest had beaten us 3 straight times in the league. You pick up a draw here. Liverpool, obviously, you drew last year. You get the win there. I think there are positive signs here that if you kind of dig even beneath the surface level, and the surface level itself is okay right now, where you're like, okay, you're 6th, 7th in the league. You have 17 points. Like, you're right in the mix. But if you kind of dig underneath that, I think you could be encouraged by look, obviously, I think we're all kind of cautiously waiting for the other the other shoe to drop and for United to go to shit again. But um, if you look at this run of fixtures they have heading forward, and you kind of look at how the team is progressing, if you told me this is kind of where they would be 10 matches into the season, I would have said that's probably that sounds good, and I'd be looking forward to it. And I think it's important not to get carried away, and there will still be growing pains. I mean, I think you saw with Sheshko in this match that he still has plenty of development in terms of coming to grips with the Premier League and being a consistent kind of threat in that attacking third. Cunha, I think he's still look. I think he's a hell of a talented player. I also think that his talent and his kind of renegade mentality, let's say, it can lead to performances like this where it feels like he's trying to do too much. He's not kind of linking with teammates well enough. We can go on and on down the list. I'm not trying to single those two out, but there are positive developments. Like we just talked a lot about some of the downsides of Ahmad at wingback, but I think one of the positive sides and what we're seeing now is him and Mbumo are really developing a nice partnership, and that's important. And I think obviously the Casemiro Bruno partnership is not, I don't think, anybody's ideal central midfield partnership, but even there, I think you are seeing signs of these guys are really starting to understand how to play off of each other. They have a good relationship. I think they understand where each other is going to be at various points. Defensively, there's always going to be some weakness there, but you're seeing signs there. I think De Ligt has really stepped up this season. I really, really have enjoyed watching him play. He's taken to English football, I think, really, really well. There's just these various signs. I mean, look, we got to say, because I've killed Luke Shaw before. I've killed the guy before. I thought he was fantastic against Forest. He was really good against Forest. He was really good against Brighton. He basically created two of the goals against Brighton, or at least chipped in for two of the goals. And he was good against Liverpool. This is the best run of form he's had in a while. So hopefully he can stay fit. And you have players coming back, right? Martinez is in training now. So this is what you want to see. I think you want to see these signs of progression throughout, and it's not always going to be consistent. It's not always going to be steady. I think there is still a lack of quality, or at least trustworthy quality on the bench. He didn't make a change in the attacking third of the pitch in this match. And I think we were all pretty annoyed by that. But I'm also somewhat sympathetic to it because I look at the bench and I'm like, okay, it's Mason Mount, who's not, I know he's had a good season, but he's not the most prolific goal scorer or game changer in an attacking sense. He has Xerxes, who I like, but has everything to prove. He has not proven himself to be a decisive force in a sense of, hey, we're chasing a goal. Can this guy come in and change the game for us? He is not proven to be like that. Kobe Mainu, I have a lot of time for him, but he's not. I think he's struggling to find his position in this team. I think it's unfortunate for him that he's not really had a chance to play next to Casemiro, who is clearly the only midfield partner that he could, I think, would have a balance with him. But this is all to say, like, I have some sympathy for a manager looking at his bench in that situation and then looking at the players he has on the pitch and being like, you know what, I'll stick with Cunha, I'll stick with Mbumo, I'll stick with Sheshko, because I think these players, maybe they're not at it today, but they have a moment of brilliance in them, and I trust that can still happen. So there is a lack of depth and quality and all these things, and I think there are long-term issues that we have, and there are some short-term issues we have as well. But the general progression of this team, especially thinking about how last season ended, and how the season started in some ways, you have to feel good about where they're heading. And like I said at the start, I just think their mentality is starting to show signs of real change, of really like understanding, what the standard is and holding themselves and each other to that standard as well.
Yeah, no, I do agree with most of that. I did think the likes of, it was surprising that we didn't make any attacking change though. Xerxes has barely played. All right, maybe Mount is just coming back from injury. Mainu didn't get on the pitch. The only subs were defensive. But to be fair, we did get that goal. We did get that point. So yeah, it did work out at least. We will take a quick break there and come back for part 2 of the show. I want to hear a bit more about what you're thinking about Amorim. Back for part 2 of the show. I mean, you did already basically say there that, you gave your summary of where we're at the moment. Obviously, you haven't done the podcast since August. A month ago, there was big calls for Amorim getting the chop. I think most of us in our kind of podcast WhatsApp were almost like agreed on that. And at that point, we were talking about press was saying maybe he has to get to the year mark. We are now at the year mark of when he was officially announced, although he didn't actually start the job till about a week or so later. I mean, yeah, well, at the moment, so you're okay with Amorim. You've seen enough signs. I said as well last week myself that, okay, this run is now giving me something to at least pin my hat on and say, okay, there is some progress here. There is evolution. Maybe we can give him more time. But where exactly do you feel on him? Because, yeah, if a couple of results changed, then, the crowd and the internet is going to change again.
Yeah. I would say, look, I think I said, I mean, I haven't been on the pod, but I would have sacked him after the Grimsby match. I think that was just such a ridiculous performance in so many ways that it's hard to comprehend. And it didn't quickly lead to improvement necessarily in the league either.
For me, it was the Brentford. It was the Brentford loss that was my kind of turn where I was like, I now don't have any faith in this guy. He has rebuilt some of that now in the month after, and fair enough. And, like I was saying, maybe you do have to give credit to the ownership and all that. They've been a bit more patient than the fans might have been. But now we're just kind of, as I said, we're okay with where we are in the league, but it's got to be at least this. We're only really at like the minimum expectation. It's not like we're doing amazing or anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, after the Brentford match, if he had been sacked, I don't think it would have been unfair. But once they made the decision, more or less, when they, Ratcliffe comes out and says, he's going to get 3 years or whatever. I mean, I think it was a little bit taken out of context. And we talked about this then too, where it was like, you can say whatever you want. If the results keep going negatively, you're not going to get 3 years. It's just not how it works. But I think they wanted to give him more time, because there were signs in some of the underlying numbers that they were getting a bit unlucky. And am I fully convinced by Ruben Amorim? No, I'm not. I think that would be, as great as this last month has been in a lot of ways, I think there's still a ton to improve, and there's still much to convince of. But if you were going to give him, until November, let's just say, if that was kind of the thinking coming into the season, that we want to give him, this 3-month period or whatever to start the season and evaluate him after that, I think it would be fair to look at that and be like, there's enough here that we still feel okay. And I mean, just as an example, I think Thomas Frank was lauded, right, as this incredible managerial employment for Spurs, and it's early days for him yet. And they've played some absolutely miserable football. And so I just think it's not as easy as taking a really good manager, even from the Premier League, from, a mid-table side, and appointing them to, a side that's considered, one of the big six, and has these expectations of not just winning, but winning in a certain way, dominating possession and entertaining the fans. I think that's a pretty big ask. And, I think there have been real signs of like our ability to play entertaining football. The Brighton match for me is probably, that's one of the most entertaining matches I've seen United play in a really long time, and in a way that was not like the Lyon match last year, right, where it's just pure insanity, where it was more like, wow, they are thoroughly the better team today. Can he bring out that type of consistency, at least at Old Trafford? If he can do that, I think that would be a big step, because it's been a while since we were since Old Trafford was a fortress. I am sympathetic to some struggles away from home, because I think if you look at the league this year, most teams are not having a fun time away from their home pitch, and I think the league is just more competitive. It is just more competitive. The gap between second place to whatever it is, like 10th, is not it's not very many points. And you look at a lot of those teams, and you think to yourself, on any given day, they can one team could beat the other. So credit to Amorim. I think it is something to say that now that we've gone away from home against Liverpool and against Forest, and we've gotten 4 out of 6 points from those matches, that's actually pretty good. And you would love it to be 6 out of 6, obviously. You'd always love to win every match. But I think you have to kind of look at this team, as much as we want them to be the finished article, they're a work in progress. And I think there's a reason why a lot of fans prior to the season would have been signing up for, hey, if we finish 6 and there are signs of regression and we look better, in going forward and being solid at the back, that would be a pretty good season. Now, maybe the expectations have changed because the league is so topsy-turvy, and it feels like Champions League is more attainable than it may have seemed coming into the season. And I think that's fair, but he's right there. We're in touching distance, and credit to him. Like, he has wins now, right, this season against Chelsea, against Liverpool, against Brighton. These are not insignificant victories.
Yeah, in that Brighton game, all 3 of them kind of delivered for us, and we were taking them up. In this game, not that much. We had to rely on 2 set pieces to get the goals, and, like I say, an absolute outstanding strike from Ahmad. Quite crazy, actually, that it's Ahmad's first goal of the season. I was kind of surprised by that myself. Last season, he was one of our main sources of goals and assists, but he is playing in the wing-back position rather than more around wing stroke number 10 as he was last season. But yeah, that was an absolute... And he's still been doing a lot of good play. A lot of the good link-up leading to Mbumo's goals have come from Ahmad, to be fair to him. I did want to give a shout-out to Elliot Anderson, playing for Nottingham Forest. He's obviously linked to us a lot. Last week, we talked about Carlos Baleba, who came to Old Trafford, and you kind of say, are these their auditions for the next window for us? Baleba failed miserably, hooked at half-time. Anderson absolutely bossed this game. He looked really good, and we will also see the third in the kind of one who's also mentioned, Adam Wharton, at the end of this month. We're playing Palace right at the end of November. But yeah, any thoughts on Elliot Anderson? We've been linked to him a lot. I don't know how much he's going to cost at this point. He's now made his England debut and everything as well, so it's not going to be cheap.
We have to see how it all kind of shakes out at the end of the season. But he had a great season last year for Forest. I think he's gone up another level now. You talked about how he kind of bossed this match. I think the most, if you're thinking about what kind of midfielder do you want at Manchester United, I think the fact that he is, he got through a tremendous amount of defensive work in this game. His passing range is fantastic. I think I think he played out that pass to the right-hand side for their second goal. I mean, it was a absolute ridiculous. I mean, just absolutely on a rope. He played that, but he's also getting the ball off the back line and then progressing play forward. So I think these are a lot of the qualities that we're kind of what do you want from, what do we need in midfield? I think he gives you a lot of qualities. I think he can play both roles, at least develop into that deeper role, defensive role that Casemiro's in, while having a progressive passing range. And I think he can absolutely play in the role that Bruno is playing in right now, where he's kind of more of a box-to-box player who is trying to get the ball into the attacking third and get it into the feet of attackers. I think he can definitely play that role. I think he looks physically robust. And like you mentioned, Baleba is a young player who's having a pretty rough season so far. There's no 2 ways about it. I wouldn't write him off. I actually thought his match against United was not that bad. I think their entire team was, I just feel like he got a lot of pelters for issues that weren't just about him. But he did not have a great match.
Yeah, there was an extra spotlight on him, right? There was the extra spotlight on him because of the thing and all. But yeah, that also shows your mentality. And we see too many players come to United and fail mentally. And that's when you kind of see somebody like Anderson going the other way.
Yeah, well, I think what's really good, to your point about the mentality, Anderson didn't want to leave Newcastle. They basically like forced him out because they needed the sale. They needed the money to make their books balance for PSR. So for him to go, right, be basically forced out of a club and then go to Forest and just keep going, pick up and not let it affect him. And now he's firmly in the England picture and all these things. That speaks really well to his mentality. And, you know, we have so much time left in the season. So for all we know, 3 months from now, we're going to be saying, "Oh, Anderson's completely dropped off. Well, you know, he's a flash in the pan," and Baliba will have picked it up, and we'll say, "Oh, see, this is the player that we always thought was great." I think there's a lot of time for us to decide on who we want, but 10 matches that are, you know, whatever, a quarter of the way basically now into the season, I think Elliot Anderson has shown me, you know, even more than a guy like Adam Wharton, who is fantastic too, but I don't think is able to cover the same amount of ground that Anderson does. Yeah, I just think he looks to me like he should be firmly at the top of United's midfield targets if they're drawing up a short list right now.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Let's say based on these, we will see Wharton close up at the end of the month, as mentioned. But yeah, Elliot Anderson's not done himself any harm there at all. As you mentioned, he came from Newcastle, and they got rid of him like we got rid of McTominay, I guess, for PSR reasons more than anything else. But yeah, they're definitely regretting that now. And whenever he goes, Forest are going to double, maybe triple their money on him. But yeah,
imagine their midfield. Imagine their midfield if they still had Anderson.
Yeah, they're already mega strong in that area, which is why they let him go, I guess. But yeah, they are very strong in that area. One thing about Elliot Anderson, though, and we'll ask Jamie about it once we get back to transfer window time, is he was a Scottish youth international. He's switched allegiances. He was playing for Scotland until I think under 18s, and then around under 21 switched to England.
That's a positive for you, right?
yeah, well, yeah, that works for me. But yeah, not sure where Jamie's at on that one. We'll ask him when it comes around to it again. But yeah, we will take another quick break there and come back for the last part of the show. Back for part 3 of this podcast. We have covered that Forest game. Next up, we will be away again at Tottenham Hotspur. Before we get into that match, I'll just give the general and regular update on Man United women. They were back in action yesterday against Brighton and Hove Albion. They'd had an international break before that. It was a 3-2 win, and it was kind of similar to the men's game against Brighton in a way, that it felt like we were comfortable in cruising for a lot of it, because we were 1-0 up, 2-0 up, but then suddenly it was 2-1. Then we went 3-1 up, and you think it's 1, but Brighton came back to 3-2, and then like the last few minutes were a bit nervy again. Jess Park, who's just been named WSL Player of the Month, absolutely smashed it again. Goal and assist. Has been outstanding signing. Like, yeah, we lost Grace Clinton in the summer and thought that we were just getting her as a make weight, but I think we've done better in that deal, and yeah, she's hit it hard. So yeah, United women going well. They are in 3rd place behind Man City, behind Chelsea. Got a game against Aston Villa this weekend, and then an absolutely huge week after that, playing against Paris Saint-Germain in the Champions League. That'll be the return of Mary Earps to Old Trafford, and she's been in the news this week because she's just released a book, and she's basically been slagging off Hannah Hampton, who replaced her in the England Lionesses team, and also slagging off Serena Wiegman, and a lot of people are kind of shocked by the things she's come out with. But yeah, I think when you're selling a book, then you've got to come out with these things, otherwise nobody's going to read your book, right? But yeah, after that Paris Saint-Germain game, it is the women's Manchester derby against City away. And then after that, we play Wolfsburg, who are a top-tier women's team in the Champions League. So yeah, United women have done really well this season, undefeated, apart from one leg in Europe. But yeah, we won the tie in the end. Undefeated in the WSL, won all the Champions League games so far. But big tests coming up. Big tests coming up for the women. And yeah, we will update on there, and probably we'll get another longer update on the women when the men hit international break again, which is coming too soon already. And Ashwin, this is all your fault. World Cup 2026 is in USA, right? And that's why we've got a ridiculous amount of international games already this season. England will, of course, be there. We're playing Spurs on the weekend, away again, and then again we have a 2-week international break. Every time we're like segmented into these international breaks. Spurs lost. They looked absolutely awful, as you said. Thomas Frank. I think they were playing at home.
8.05 XG.
Yeah, exactly. 0.05 XG at home. This was a particular killer for me because for some bizarre reason I've got 3 Tottenham players in my FPL team at the moment.
Who do you have?
I've got Kudus, who's had a good season. It's a fair play. I've got Richarlison, who I'm definitely getting rid of this week because he had a couple of good weeks and then he's not even starting. I think they went for Kolo Muani. Sometimes they started Tell. He's like in and out of the team. I think he has been injured, to be fair to him, but he's been in and out of the team. So yeah, Richarlison is going. But if I sell him, he's obviously going to score against us, isn't he? That's the way these things go every time.
This is what you added Mbumo this week, and look what happened.
I didn't add him actually. I wanted to. I really wanted to add him, but I couldn't make it work. And I've got him penciled in for this week maybe. But again, I wanted to get rid of Richarlison, but Mbumo's a midfielder. So yeah, I need to still work out how that's going to work. My fantasy team's gone a bit to shit in the last few weeks. I'd started the season quite well, but I'm like dropping down in all the milli leagues. So I need to do something drastic all of a sudden. I've also got Van der Ven, who I left on the bench for scoring 2. He scored 2 goals and got a clean sheet the week before, and he was sat on my bench with like 25 points or something. But again, yeah, Tottenham hadn't been keeping many clean sheets, and who on earth's expecting the centre-back to pop up with 2 goals? But yeah, they had a bad defeat over here, but they have had a pretty good start to the season. I mean, they're above us in the league. They've been doing all right in the Champions League, and obviously they're only in the Champions League because they beat us in the Europa League final last season. I already said that I would be okay with draws out of our next 2 games. Imran said he expected at least 1 win out of these 2. How are you feeling about going to Tottenham this weekend?
Well, the thing is, Imran always sets the standards high so that he can perpetually be annoyed with United. So that's not too surprising. But I think this is like, it's one of those weird ones where you kind of wish that you had played Spurs before this last match because you're expecting a response. But they've been really poor at home now for a long time. I think they have 3 wins at home in the calendar year, if I'm not mistaken. So like their home form has been atrocious. I've watched a decent amount of Spurs this season. Xavi Simons has looked awful. He looks just, not up to speed in this league yet. I think their squad is also getting stretched pretty thin because they have Champions League matches. Something that we're being benefited from is not having the Champions League. But they have these Champions League matches, and they have some injuries, and I think that their squad is getting stretched quite a bit. And on top of that, like I mentioned earlier, I think Thomas Frank is really struggling to come to grips with, the expectation that Spurs are different from what they are at Brentford. What's acceptable at Brentford tactically is not going to be acceptable, and not just the fans. I think with players too. I mean, I don't know if you saw that clip after the match of Van de Ven and Dejed Spence kind of just totally ignoring him, walking up the pitch when he went to go try and shake their hands. But I think the tactics that they're set up with to be so defensive and play direct and strictly play on the counter consistently is maybe not the most enjoyable for players in that squad. Especially when you feel like, Chelsea's a good team, but we should be able to go toe-to-toe with them. So I think that there is a lot of growing for Thomas Frank to do as a manager as well. And yeah, like you mentioned, their striker situation has not been great because of, obviously, Kolo Muani has not necessarily hit the ground running. Tell is a young player, so he's very, very up and down. And then you also have Richarlison, who doesn't seem to be trusted. So, I mean, look, obviously, we have not had a good recent record against Spurs at all. So I'm not going to assume that we're going to walk in and get 3 points. But in terms of form, you would favor United. Form obviously doesn't mean everything, and form also changes, right? But I think you should feel as strongly and as confident as you could about United going into a match away at Spurs as you have in a long time, because we look like we are, not the finished article, not always consistent, but I think there's a bit more positivity to our play right now than Spurs. I watched them midweek. I think it was last week. They played Monaco in the Champions League. I mean, they were dreadful in that match too. So they just look like they're really, again, struggling in terms of keeping up with the hectic schedule, and also maybe not totally on board with some of the tactical approaches of Thomas Frank. And Thomas Frank's a really good manager. He's definitely good at coming up with individual game plans, but I don't think that he is, he's not like prime Mourinho or something. We can go into this match and expect Amorim to be able to match wits with him. I think that's a fair expectation to have. And, we've seen also Amorim be a little bit more flexible in how he approaches our kind of style of play, even if the system is fairly consistent. I think that's a really good sign as well, that he is being a little bit more pragmatic match to match. He's tweaking things within the formation. That's what we wanted to see. I mean, that was the big sticking point, and one of the early criticisms of him, that was a fair criticism of him, is just how rigid we are. And I think that rigidity, at least again, not in terms of the formation. The formation does generally stay the same. But I think how we are operating within that formation has changed. And those are all, to me, good reasons to be optimistic going into a match against Spurs in the form they're in.
Yeah, definitely. Although, we say they've been awful. They are actually above us in the league, but we're both on 17 points. It's only on goal difference. They've got a few injuries. Solanke is out. Maddison is out long term. Kulusevski out. Bissouma. So they are missing a few players. And it will be interesting because Thomas Frank was definitely looked at by Ineos when they were looking for Ten Hag's replacement. I'm sure he was in the mix there, and eventually, obviously, they've gone for Amorim, and Frank has ended up at Spurs. So, it will be very interesting to see how this match goes through. But I think it is a good opportunity for us to be picking up some points. I would accept a draw just because I'm just so used to us losing too many games now that I'm like, can we at least go on a 5-6 game run without losing a match? But it is a good potential for us. And then, going into that international break again to pick up 3 points. We will see what happens there. We are going to round off this podcast with a question. I think it was thrown out in the podcast group by David, it was actually. And it all came around Bruno, basically. Bruno often gets a lot of criticism. And loads of fans wanted to ship out Bruno in the summer, saying time to cash in on him. He has been a frustrating player at times, often gave the ball away, but he hit 300 appearances. He's had 100 goals for United, 84 assists. He does deliver the numbers. And the question came who is the best signing in the post-Fergie era? And I think Bruno, this has to undoubtedly be top of that list. But then, the question was thrown out. Who is your top 3 signings in the post-Fergie era? We've had so many bad ones. The question is often who's the worst one, and there's loads to debate then. We have talked about that before. But who have you got, Ashwin, on your list of 3?
So I think Bruno is no question for me. He's probably the only signing we've made after Ferguson that I think there are no qualifiers about why is he deemed a success. He is a successful signing. He has been talismanic. He is, I think he's everything you want in a team player, his willingness to play different positions. He never throws his managers under the bus. He never throws his teammates under the bus, even though he will just, wildly gesticulate on the pitch at them and wave his hands. He fronts up after difficult matches and all the things that you want from a high-profile leader in the squad. I think he conducts himself absolutely fantastically off the pitch as a captain. There's no ambiguity about it. He's been absolutely worth the fee, and he continues to be, I think, by far still their most influential player. So Bruno for me, no question. I'm gonna say one that I think a lot of people will not expect. I think Dan James is 100% one of their top 3 signings because he was acquired for £15 million. He was a useful, if unspectacular, squad player for 2 years, and they sold him for a nice profit to Leeds, where he still remains, I believe, doing not much or anything for them. But in terms of
I think he's still like one of our only profitable transfers in the whole post-Fergie era. I think literally he was the only one for a while. I'm trying to think, did we get rid of anybody else? But yeah, I think he's definitely one of a few. There'll be 3 or 4 maximum in the post-Fergie era transfers where we've actually made money on them. He was the only one for a while, and I think he might still be, to be honest.
Yeah.
But go on, what's your number 3?
3? I think it's actually quite hard. I think there's a lot of debates about who you could have. I will say Daley Blind as my 3rd. I thought he was really good at United for the time he was here. I think if a different manager other than Jose Mourinho came in, he would have been kept and appreciated and utilized a lot more. Obviously there were physical limitations with him, but I always felt like, he was good for us at left back. He was good for us at left center back. He was even pretty decent for us as a central defensive midfielder. I think that there are, and what he cost, I believe, £17 million. I think we sold him for something along those lines. He was a good player for United, and if you go and watch, I think he goes to Ajax after and goes back to Ajax. He was a really good player for them in their Champions League runs at various points too. So I think Daley Blind was a really good player. I think he was worth the money that United paid, and I think he recouped the money that United paid. And I wanted to pick a 3rd one that was a little bit off the like a little hot takey 3rd one.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Like I said, I was not expecting that shout there. I think he had quite a few injuries, didn't he, Daley, when he was with us? He was kind of unlucky with, and then he didn't quite fit into Mourinho's system when he came there. But yeah, I did think he was a good player for us when he was around. I would not have him in this kind of list of best 3. For me, I am going to give Harry Maguire one of those 3 slots. We paid a hell of a lot of money for him, but he's been here and delivered for us pretty much every season. And then there was a 6-month period where he was bad in the middle of it. It came on the back of all that Greece fiasco and all that. And he was obviously struggling mentally. I think as well he was a player where the United armband weighed too heavily on him, and he's come back and been a lot stronger player since getting rid of that armband. And I do think that in an era where we've had so many wastes of money, I think that at this point we say Harry Maguire was worth it, even though we paid a lot. I know we did, but I think he has been good, and he has been a leader for us as well going in there. I mean, other players who've delivered for us, Luke Shaw is still kicking around. It's difficult to say he was a good signing just because he's had so many injuries, but I struggle to blame a player for those injuries, and he is having a really good season now. And whenever he's been fit and had a run of games for us, he's always been a good player. It's always just been those injuries have been the problems.
You just like Shaw because he turns up for England.
No. I'm just talking about playing because we've had so many wastes of monies that these players have been around a long time. When they've played, they have generally been good for us. So there I say, look, they are a good signing. They have been worth their transfer fee. As I say, the only caveat with Shaw is missed so much football. Maguire did have that massive wobble in the middle, nearly left us, but stayed, and now is still delivering for us. And then there was a lot of other good shout-outs for this. Zlatan was mentioned by a couple of people when we had this chat, and he did have an absolutely outstanding season that first year under Mourinho when we won the Europa League and we won the League Cup as well. I think he hit 38 goals and assists in 46 games, which is absolutely brilliant. He then had a load of injury problems, didn't really play much of that second season, and then was shipped out in the January window. But for that one season, and he was a free transfer. I know we paid a crazy amount of wages, but he was brilliant. I always loved Juan Mata. I think he could have been even bigger player for us, and sometimes I remember Van Gaal as well shoved him out on the right wing. Didn't think it was necessarily his position, but he still delivered quite a lot of goals and assists for us from there. And just as a character, I always really liked him. Ander Herrera, a similar kind of basket for him, that when he was around I was so sad when he left, and he should have been kept on. So yeah, these were players that I think were decent signings, and they could have been better. I don't know in a couple of years' time whether any of the current crop can be added to that list. We've already had a year off Yoro, De Ligt and Mazraoui, and I think they so far have been good signings. Still a bit early to be putting them into this kind of list.
Yeah.
And Mbumo, of course, is smashing it. And we'll see as well. Jory's still out on Cunha, Lemons and Sesko. The other one as well, though, Ahmad. He's been around a while now.
Yeah,
I know he went out on loan a lot.
I was thinking about including him. That one was a bit weird to me. Just it feels like his career has not fully started with United, so I just didn't kind of register him. But he could definitely be included in this purely like you mentioned with Shaw, just the fact that he's been here for as long as he has, and he was probably our best player last season in a lot of ways, or at least could have been our best player last season if he hadn't gotten hurt. And I think he's generally been a good player when he's had opportunities, but I feel like this is the first real season for him to kind of, not only does he have a chance to kind of establish himself, but the team doesn't feel as much in flux as it was last year when he did have a good season, but it just, I don't know, it doesn't it feels a little bit different right now. So I think after the season, if he has a strong season, and I think he is really starting to get into some form now, I would definitely have him in this list.
Yeah, and last year was kind of his breakout season. Ten Hag held him back a little bit too much. Amorim kind of gave him the freedom, but then shoved him now back into that wing-back role. But I think he's doing pretty well at it, actually. He is doing pretty well at it. I don't think it's his natural position. But yeah, we kind of paid a lot of money for him. People always say we paid 40 million for Ahmad. We actually didn't. We paid 20 million, and then there was a load of clauses, and I've got no idea at what point we're at on those clauses. We never really hear. I mean, even if he was 40 million, we'd get that back today if we were going to sell him. If he was 20 million, it was an absolute bargain. But let's assume he was something around 30. There was two other shouts that for Fred and Pogba, and I'm just going to say the less said about those two, I'm not even going to I don't know why they're even mentioned in this debate. All right, Pogba did have some really good highs when he was delivering for us, but the way he left and all that means he does not deserve to be on that list. Fred, he was up and down, and kind of did have a year or two decent, but I don't think they're like challenging others to be in a top three here. But yeah, as I say, we're giving a good list there, and in a bad era for us in transfers, there is at least some decent players we can remember, and a few of them still in the team. Bruno, Maguire, Shaw, the ones who are still around, and yeah, a few good shouts for Zlatan, Mata, Herrera, and Daley Blind from you. I think that rounds us off for this week of the podcast. We will be back after that Spurs game this weekend, as I say. The men playing Spurs, the women playing Villa. We'll be back early next week. See you then. Goodbye from me.